I gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about marketing lessons from the show Adolescence.
It's crazy what your brain tells you to do when you're a kid.
With the help of our special guest, Vimeo CMO, Charlie Ungashick. Charlie, how are you?
Ian, how are you? Thank you.
Excited to have you on the show. Going to chat marketing at Vimeo. We're going to chat video and adolescence. So why the heck did you pick adolescence to talk about today?
Well, Ian, thank you for having me on. When you and I talked about doing this episode, it was probably a few weeks ago, and Adolescence had just come out. But I actually still think it's pretty popular right now and in the zeitgeist for lots of reasons. So hopefully this will be still pretty timely for those listening today.
It's definitely super timely and relevant because I hear someone bring it up to me, every couple days, whether it's, people who are, future guests on the show, they're like, oh, here's one idea that we should do, which is kind of interesting or just sort of in the zeitgeist. But I think that, it just sort of speaks to the fact that you make something great and interesting and different and the way that you made it and all that sort of stuff that, it's going to stand out and people are actually going to talk about it to each other, which is the whole point of this show, is make it remarkable.
Exactly. And it's funny because it has lots, for me anyway, it's lots of layers of why I find it interesting, not the least of which is how I heard about it. I'm one of those people that if you insist that I go to this restaurant enough times, I probably won't go. But for some reason, my algorithm on For You page on TikTok suggested, guys, you got to try this. You have to see this video on Netflix. It just came out. And so I travel a lot for work. And so whenever I go on a trip, sometimes I'll load up my laptop or my iPad with things to watch. And so this wasn't even on my radar. I downloaded all 4 episodes and I was just instantly hooked from the very first shot because I could tell within 2 minutes that it was a continuous shot production. And I was like, okay, this is it. Yes. All right. I'm in. So it was actually how I found out about it to begin with via TikTok. And then the production value was clearly unique. And to your point, I think, Ian, people are just clamoring for great content. Nothing against superhero movies and the latest Superman reboot, but I think, authenticity and great storytelling people will command a premium and talk about it for a long time. Totally agreed.
And switching gears to your role at Vimeo, tell us what it means to be CMO of Vimeo.
Yeah, listen, I'm delighted to be the CMO of Vimeo. Vimeo is an amazing brand. People love to be part of Vimeo. People's careers have been made on Vimeo and our Staff Picks program. And today, Vimeo is the world's largest private video distribution network. We have over 800 billion minutes of videos. 100 billion are added every year. We have millions of creators who come to us for inspiration and want a platform for high quality, video and storytelling. My role at Vimeo, to answer your question, is, global CMO. So that encompasses brand awareness, demand generation, customer marketing, and also some fun things too, like our alliances, partnerships with Google and Apple, all the way down to, other AI startups and our community. So the filmmakers, the more creators of our community that have been with Vimeo since the beginning. Vimeo is a company that has been around for 20 years. And as a fun fact, we invented the like button back in the day.
Crazy.
That's cool.
Yeah, I've long been a fan of Vimeo and have been a Vimeo customer, off and on for years, sort of depending on where I was, and convincing people to do certain things as it tends to be at companies, but just always felt so like you're in good hands, to borrow a phrase, with Vimeo when just the quality of the recording actually coming through, to the audience. And that was always, Vimeo to me is just always sort of screamed quality, which I feel like is really important when you are a storyteller, when you are a creative, and video is your way in, and you don't want buffering, you don't want, all the other things that go with it.
Yeah, listen, there's a time and a place for free high compression, which you know what that is. Like I, for example, don't watch movie trailers on YouTube. I love YouTube, but there's a time and a place for YouTube. But when I want to actually consume a movie trailer or something with quality, I don't watch it because the audio and the video are both compressed. And frankly, I really dislike ads. So I actually pay for premium. And I think to your point, that's primarily the main reason people come to Vimeo is they care a lot about the experience that their videos get with their actual viewers and their customers, the people who consume their videos. Because after all, this is all about storytelling, right? And that's why we as marketers are here to tell the greatest stories that we can. And the best medium for doing that, of course, is video. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to be part of this journey with Vimeo as we get the company back into growth and we enter some new markets and we embrace the dawn of AI.
And we'll get to Adolescence here in 1 second. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about what is next for Vimeo. How is AI changing things for y'all and really changing the video business?
Yeah, it's funny. When you talk to creators, sometimes you'll find that there's a love-hate reaction to AI, because I think many creators, whether you're a copywriter or a script writer or a video producer, these tools can look like they're going to take your job away. And on the flip side of it, many creators realize what a superpower AI can actually be for them. So I actually believe that we're actually not replacing creators. We're giving them capabilities they never could have before. I mean, the future of storytelling is not AI versus humans. It's humans amplified by AI. And with that, they can tell bigger, more emotionally resonant stories than they ever could before. One of our filmmakers, for example, won a staff picks for creating a video with Sora. That's the OpenAI generative AI framework. Mm-hmm. And it follows the timeline of a couple traveling through time from the 1960s all the way through to today. And it's a continuous shot, just like the Adolescence. And it was entirely made with AI. And so, but it doesn't replace the creator's need to come up with a concept, think about the storyboards, what type of emotion are we trying to tell through these stories. And that's where I think AI can really help creators. Specifically, what is Vimeo doing? We're doing a number of things. So first of all, we're helping creators get their videos discovered. So improving search engine and AI optimization.
Cool.
We're helping them get global coverage. So we do AI translations and captioning right within the video itself. So no need to create 7 different versions of a video for 7 different languages, for example. And we can also tell creators, hey, using AI, did you know that these types of parts of your videos are the ones that get the most engagement, so that you can then improve your future projects as well. So we view AI as really as a superpower that takes human-driven storytelling to the next level.
And who's like the average, customer personas for Vimeo?
Honestly, it runs the gamut, but there's 3 primary ones. The 3 primary personas for us are marketers, so video professionals who are making videos for advertising, websites, embedded apps, and things like that. So we have educators, people who are working within learning and development at organizations, or they're really good at their craft and they want to use video to share their knowledge with other people. And then there's also the third type of customer, and that is an entertainer. So somebody who is selling their videos to other people so that they can be entertained or instructed by, the content that they produce as well. But what those 3 personas all have in common is they all use Vimeo as a platform, but they also use video as a medium to tell their stories.
We'll get more into Vimeo later. Meredith, what the heck is Adolescence?
So Adolescence is a limited series created by Stephen Graham, who you might know from Peaky Blinders.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
I remember seeing him in Snatch like a long time ago, and Jack Thorne.
Snatch is one of the greats. I was just watching a video of Snatch this weekend, scrolling on Instagram, and I was like, I freaking loved that movie. So good.
It's so good. It's so good. And it was also created by Jack Thorne. And the show is really made as a reaction to a bunch of news stories about knife crimes involving young boys in the UK. And so they really wanted to explore the effect of media and public figures on young boys and sort of incel culture and masculinity. And so it tells the story of this 13-year-old boy, Jamie, who's arrested for allegedly murdering a girl in his class.
I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defense if you do not mention one
Dad, I
question,
haven't done
something
anything.
which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
Dad,
do you understand?
I haven't done anything.
Do you
Dad.
understand?
And I mentioned the news stories, but this show really came about because of a confluence of things. So the director, Philip Barantini, was sort of filming in, Charlie, you mentioned this, in a continuous take. And that's because his movie Boiling Point came out in 2021, which used the same technique. And after that, he was having a bunch of meetings with folks from Plan B, which is actually Brad Pitt's company. And they wanted to get into the TV space. So coming out of film, going into TV. They also wanted to work with Stephen Graham, and they wanted to do something using that one-shot take. And at the same time, all of those news stories were coming out. So it was all of these things coming together. And Stephen Graham, just in response to those news stories, said, it shocked me. I was thinking, what's going on? What's happening in society where a boy stabs a girl to death? What's the inciting incident here? And then it happened again and again and again. And I really just wanted to shine a light on it and ask, why is this happening today? What's going on? How have we come to this? So Stephen Graham, the co-creator, also plays the father, which I thought was really interesting. And he's since been nominated for 8 BAFTAs. The mom is played by Christine Tremarco. But the one thing I wanted to point out, and I think the most remarkable character, is the son, Jamie, who's really the main character. He's played by Owen Cooper.
Are you all right? You look a bit red. Did I scare you when I shouted?
She wrote this on your
I mean, I'm
Instagram.
only 13. I don't think I look that scary.
And Owen Cooper had no prior acting experience, which is quite amazing. Stephen Graham really wanted an unknown for the part because he felt like the performance would be more authentic that way. And so he had his casting director, Shaheen Beg, looking at like school groups, theater groups, school clubs for the right boy to play the part. And they ended up doing over 500 auditions before finding Owen Cooper. And she just said he had natural talent. Barantini, the director, said, actors have trained for most of their lives to do what Owen just does instinctively. He'd done a couple of drama classes as a hobby, but he never really acted before. He didn't have any preconceptions. And they did narrow it down to 4 or 5 boys for the part. And they decided to cast them all in other parts because they said, well, one, it's like the topic is so dark that I feel like going through this process could be quite traumatic. But Barantini had said, we didn't want to bring them through all this stress just to say no. And so they ended up, casting all of them in one part or another. But Owen was their pick from day one. And the last thing I wanted to point out is about the storytelling aspect of the show. And I think it's really interesting how they went about it. Like the creators deliberately made it so that you would be on Jamie's side from the very beginning.
He's a good kid, yeah, and I'm a good dad. Do you know what I mean? He really is. Look, you said yourself. You even said he was bright. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I did.
So, do you understand?
I can see that, but I think the police have some pretty compelling evidence.
They wanted you to really see and believe that Jamie is a kid and they want you to think he couldn't possibly have committed this crime. But I should mention, there's definitely spoiler alerts in this. They all also wanted to show indisputable evidence that he did do it by the end of episode 1. And so then it becomes more a question of why did he do it instead of who did it or did he do it? And so all of these things I think are just remarkable about Adolescence and such an intense show, but so worth the watch. And I think one thing that adds to that intensity is really the one-shot take. From my experience, like it seems like that one-shot take gives sort of like an immediacy in real time, has you sort of experiencing everything in real time. But Charlie, I'm wondering what your read is on this, because it was the first thing that you mentioned really stuck out to you about this show. What do you think it sort of does for the storytelling?
Yeah, it almost becomes, oh, by the way, Meredith, that's a fantastic summary and all the interesting things about it. Some things I didn't even know as well about the casting, for example. The continuous shot is such a unique persona added to, it's almost like the continuous shot becomes a persona of the movie when you've seen like 1917 or
for sure
Birdman, or, it's like, oh, wait, there's something else going on here. Yep. That's just of interest and unique. And then if you're like me and intellectually curious, you then go into how did they actually produce this thing? Yep. So as you're consuming it and enjoying it, you're like wondering, how did they do this? And how did they make the camera go inside a front door, up a staircase, get in a close shot, and then come back down? So the technical aspects become very, very interesting, much more than any other production. The other thing that's interesting too, and made me thought differently about things as a marketer, is because it's a continuous shot, you actually have to stick around for some things that would have been definitely edited out for time. So for example, when Jamie was admitted to the police station, he had to do all of his 10 fingerprints, right? So you literally had to watch him do all 10. Wow. And it didn't feel torturous at all to sit through that, but they couldn't not do it because of the one take. So even from a writing and content development perspective, they had to deal with the fact that it was a one take. And so now you need to not be continuously artificially entertained throughout the whole episode. I thought they did that masterfully. So for all those reasons and more, it was just, a wonderful production.
When I was reading about how they did that, they said that they just had to like practice. Like they did weeks of practice before finally filming. And they did they would act out the characters, and then one of them would come around with the camera, and they had to choreograph where the camera's going. Cause you're right. It's has all that movement constantly keeping you engaged and keeping you with the whole experience. So I thought that was really interesting.
Totally. And by the way, I think Netflix does such a great job of showing you behind the scenes. So you can watch a number of interviews and behind the scenes footage. One of the ones that really struck me was the use of the drone.
That moment would have felt almost like a video game walking down the street. I think it would just take the audience away from what the piece is.
And then Phil called me up and he said, Matt and I think we found a way to make the camera fly.
If the camera could float away by itself, then it couldn't possibly be attached to a person. It kind of feels more ethereal.
So it's literally one physical camera, and it's a camera I learned called a DJI Ronin 4D. It's only like a $7,000 camera, but if you think about it, surrounded by millions of dollars of production and choreography, to a person, everyone has their role, and they can't mess it up because they mess up the entire take. But towards the end, there's this wonderful handoff where you see the school children walking down the street, and then the camera just magically floats up into the air and then ends up at the place where the victim was killed. And there's a set of flowers and a memorial there. But how they handed a physical camera off into a drone setting and then came back down and shot a close-up just blows my mind. And there's a great episode from Netflix about how they achieved that.
Yeah, talk about pressure on the actors, right? Doing everything in one shot and not trying to ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah, especially with a amateur actor playing the lead.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But there was even in the scene where there was a fire drill and all this, the school emptied out. So you had 232 kids that were all extras having to play their part, and they did it at least 10 times. So everyone had to line up exactly the same way. And it kind of really boggles the mind how they were to pull that off, not just with a few actors or a few production hands.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated with how something like this gets greenlit, because the first answer is you go to Brad Pitt and his production company.
Yeah.
And that greases the skids for Netflix for sure. And that hints at one of my takeaways for later. But when I first heard of it, because I think about film, and we're shooting a little digital TV pilot here coming up soon, and we're shooting a documentary here soon, and we're doing stuff like that at Caspian. And my first thought was, they shot it in one shot. Isn't that cheap? Not cheap meaning hey, it's going to look cheap, but cheap meaning that sounds great. One shot, just that's how Clint Eastwood shoots, right? one take. And it's like, oh, no, not one take. Many takes, but just one single shot. And you go, oh, well, that's actually a lot more complex. And so, part of the thing that's interesting to me is like, as a marketer, take a project to leadership and you go, hey, I'm going to paint the picture not only of like what we're trying to achieve, the art side and what we're going to get from the audience, but also like the production side, like what is actually going to be able to go into this so we can do it, affordably and sort of, hit the mark. And that's a pretty big unknown. That's pitching, it's painting yourself into a corner, and you're pitching someone with like a huge unknown, right? Because when you shoot something, normally you say, hey, we're gonna get one take, maybe we'll take another for coverage, and maybe the actor's gonna have to do a couple more. But generally speaking, in a cost-controlled environment, you're like, at the end of the day, we'll just have to use something or cut away to something else if we don't get the shot we want. Whereas this, you just can't do that. So I wonder what Netflix, said. And they said, well, what if you don't get it? What if it takes you 15 tries and you have to stretch, budget over time, over and over and over again? You could see how this thing could get really bloated really quickly. On the other side of it, you're pitching such a contained thought and idea for how to execute this that, and he'd already done it before, right? He'd already done something in a similar way. So I think, de-risked there, but it's just fascinating to get something that like really hasn't been done quite like this before, obviously, with exceptions like 1917 and stuff like that.
But if you think about it, it's a combined risk. The combined risk of having a continuous, shot production with the primary actor who's never been on screen before.
For sure.
Right. So Owen, the actor who played Jamie, the first episode they actually shot, they shot them out of sequence. So the third episode was the first one they shot. It's basically a 2-person shot with him and the lawyer who is making judgment on Jamie's character. And by the way, she was amazing, Erin Doherty. And so the two of them, the interplay there where it surfaces that there's really 2 Jamies, at least 2, behind the scenes. There's the lovable kid who just wants to be adored and have some friendship. And his demeanor just turns instantly through their dialogue. And what's amazing too is if you watch it again, you can see the lighting and you can hear the rain outside of the building change when his moods go up and down. But to take a risk with a brand new actor, a 14-year-old boy in this case, and have him just completely nail it with the production value, it's pretty remarkable too, and risky.
You see a swan glide gracefully across the water, but its legs are flapping like mad. And that is basically what each one of these episodes are.
Yeah, let's make the call.
But I think some of the best projects that, we've all worked on are probably like that. They're risky and audacious.
And I think you and like you said, it's a compounding risk because, okay, let's just say that the actors all got the scene perfect, but one of the handoffs from the camera got messed up, or when it hooks in, to this in a certain way, that something got messed up there or it wasn't working. So just many opportunities for failure, which makes it a lot harder. Yeah. Plus weather, plus other stuff, the rain, rain in the outside. I don't think they were controlling the elements, but.
Yeah, that's true. One of the interesting things about that specific episode, which I thought was the best one, was the fact that there was an ad lib moment because Jamie actually yawned inadvertently. By the way, it was the 12th take that they did that became the episode.
Amazing.
And so the very last one, which is the 12th one, he actually yawns in the middle of it.
Yes, I've asked some straightforward questions, but I think... Am I boring you? No? Okay.
She had the ad lib, and so he immediately snapped to. And so that's another one of those BTS episodes from Netflix that's worth watching too, is how they actually acted these roles.
I think the point that you made about the fingerprints is such a great one, because those are often the things that get skipped over, get cut to. I mean, one of the hallmarks of storytelling is, right, it's like if you're going on a cross-country road trip, you skip everything until there's the first obstacle, right? So it's like, if there's no obstacle in Nevada, you don't show any of Nevada, you know what I mean? Whereas in continuous, you have to show every single small detail. And it's whatever the whatever the director is shooting, or the camera operator is shooting at that moment. And there's sort of no wasted details, which makes for really compelling TV. And you kind of don't want to look away, right? Because you don't want to miss anything.
Well, that's the beauty of the format too, is it's completely immersive. You can't look away because you will inherently lose something or miss something, but it's not gimmicky. That's what I meant about the fingerprints. It's like, no, it's going to make you sit there and watch him get the fingerprints. And there's something super immersive and enticing about that at the same time that's sort of counterintuitive for how we as marketers produce, video assets typically.
I think there's also something there that the whole point of this is to get inside this person's head. And so in order to really sit with them and get inside of the head of all the people around him, right? That in order to really understand it, like living the entire shot, the entire scene actually helps you to do that. Whereas if you're cutting away to different things, like, it might be, you're missing something there, right? But because you're living with him in the moment and you're seeing what they see, and, you are getting the entire sort of angstiness of a 13-year-old, which is super important to be sitting with them the entire time, which if you sat with a 13-year-old for an hour when they don't want to be talking to you, it's not super fun.
The other interesting thing for me, we've talked a lot about the production and the acting. I have 2 teenage daughters, and I frankly didn't know much about incel culture, toxic masculinity, and the need for younger men to be heard and supported. And frankly, when I watched it, remember I was in a plane watching it originally, and so I didn't even pick up on the nuances of red pill and the emoji symbols. And so I actually had to watch it again after talking to my daughter, who was a freshman in college. And so it was a great storytelling and wonderful to watch, but it actually gave me meaningful things to talk to my daughters about, which is also, the reason we're here and the reason we tell our stories is to have human connection. And so even the content of Adolescence was very meaningful for me. Similarly, around the content, if in Adolescence, the schools are completely out of control. They have no control over the kids.
Ryan! What have you done?
The classrooms are chaotic, and all the teachers do is turn on a TV and play some videos or whatever. And so you do wonder whether there's generational things that are happening inside of the storytelling that the creators really pulled off well.
I want to jump back to the filming here really quick. I totally agree with everything you just said. And there's all sorts of like second watch stuff I want to get into in a second. Another thing, just quickly back to the filming is, fun fact that this is the same way that they shoot the bear in terms of sort of like the cameras. And that's also extremely popular. And so I think stylistically, you have a lot of just like that sort of visceral type of shooting and handhelds and that type of stuff is interesting. And I think keeps your attention. I think that's part of the reason why like the bear is like, you feel like you can't look away because it's just so intense. I would also say it is completely immersive, but at the same time, it kind of also takes you out of it a little bit. And I'll explain that when you see something like this, and I would imagine a lot of people who find out about the show probably know that it's shot continuous before they go in. I shouldn't say that. I would be curious. It would be great. I wish I could know. But I think it also does kind of at a certain point take you out of it a little bit in a good way, where I remember the first like continuous shot thing that I remember that just like blew me away is, I forget what episode, but it's like episode 5 or something like that of True Detective, where they do the high scene where you're like, this is absolutely freaking insane. But anyways, it's sort of like, it's so compelling. And then it sort of like kind of takes you out a little bit because you're like, are they really going for it? Like, are we doing this the whole, episode or the whole, scene or whatever? And it immediately in your mind, you're like, after this, I got to look up how this is done. Right. And like, the combination of being immersive while also piquing your interest so much that you're like, I got to search this afterwards. And then I need to rewatch to pick up all of the things that I missed, all the emojis and all the things to learn more about the culture. It's kind of the trifecta, right? It's like you're interested in the topic, you're interested in how they made the thing, and obviously the actual storyline that you saw. It's just, that's masterful work.
Yep, 100%.
Marketing takeaways. What do you got for me?
I was thinking about what I could take away from a marketing perspective. We touched on a couple things, bold storytelling. I think, as I mentioned earlier, some of the things that I've been the most proud of are things that were super out of the box, almost inachievable when you sort of bring the idea to your team. Not all of them are achievable. Not all of them are inspiring, but some of the best ones have been. And so I typically, love being visionary when it comes to doing big things that require big sort of game-changing execution. And, when I looked at Adolescence, the combination of all the things that we talked about certainly have those elements. Another one is generations, right? Vimeo is a 20-year-old company, and I do wonder where the puck is going so I can skate towards it. Where is the younger generation who are making high-quality videos and storytelling? Where are they going? What editors are they using? Where do they want their videos to be discovered and how? And so as a marketer, I always continuously look at demographics and psychographics and figure out how to elicit brain chemistry to ensure that people who I'm targeting are the ones that I want to connect with. I think the Adolescence was interesting because it had something for lots of different generations. And in fact, my daughters probably looked at it very differently than I did. And then when we compared notes in our conversations, it created that human element that we talked about earlier. And then I probably think the third one is authenticity. We're all consumers, and we should all be comfortable in our B2B marketing by providing the same emotional authenticity that we find on TikTok and Netflix and Instagram. I think a lot of B2B marketers tend to be buttoned up, a little bit more corporate at times. And I think, B2B marketers, they don't buy from a bee. They don't buy from a building. They buy from human beings. And I think our storytelling and our marketing can be much more authentic when we're thinking about the consumerization of the types of things that we do. So shorter form, more authentic, maybe even lo-fi. There's a time and a place for those kind of things that I think can propel our results.
One of the things that I was just so interested by when I saw the Brad Pitt thing was like, they must have met on the set of Snatch, right? I mean, they had to have. I mean, unless they knew each other like before that or whatever, and I couldn't figure this out.
I would assume so, that they met
right?
then. Yeah.
I mean, they both were like stars in that movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my first marketing takeaway for this is, Snatch was 2000. It's 25 years later, a quarter of a century later, right? And these two guys are teaming up to work on something in some form or fashion. I don't know how involved Brad Pitt was, but it just struck me that like sometimes, doing a project that is really crazy requires the trust of someone that you've known for a long time. And like, I think earlier in your career, you kind of don't even realize that someday you're going to be in your career for 20 years and that you're going to have known people for 15, 10, whatever. And having someone, on your side support that, whether they work in your organization or outside your organization, to get something like that made, I think is super valuable. And I just thought that was a good lesson. The other thing, I think it's just so important when it comes to video projects. Like, Charlie, you talked about it earlier, like how important video is. I think we really still, even with the data we have, don't truly appreciate how much more impactful video is than other mediums. Like, I feel like, other than maybe, live performances and going somewhere, and doing the thing in person, it's so arresting. It's so moving. It's so transformational. It's been part of our lives for so long. But I think it's just worth remembering that all of that, a lot of the video that you've seen in your life has either been really carefully crafted by a storyteller, probably with a really good sense of direction, all that, or it's probably like user generated content, which sort of has been served to you because it was the most popular thing, that basically crowdsourced from millions of people that also thought it was good. And when it comes to the former, which is what most marketers do, is create that stuff, that how you create it is important. That thinking of like how I am going to shoot it, how am I going to get the information out is oftentimes just as important as the actual story itself. And just so often, like, we just do stuff and we say, hey, I'm going to do this like the cheapest way possible. Like, I thought about this. Oh, hey, one take, that's the cheapest way. But in reality, it's like, maybe you have to do the same scene 10 times in a row, start to finish, in order to get the best result. And like, if you sat down with the CEO and was like, we need to record this episode 10 times, they would never do it. Like they would be like, absolutely not. You're wasting my time. You're wasting whatever. But like, but what if this is the way to make it great? This is the way to have it escape, to have people love it. Is like, we need to do it 10 times. And I know that would be a really hard ask, but yeah, sometimes it's worth it.
You had my friend Vanessa from Descript on a couple episodes ago. So scroll down.
You can say it either way.
You can say it either way. They don't care. I love that. But she was talking about how video projects are much more accessible these days, using some of the tools like Descript or Canva, CapCut. It's making video projects so much more accessible. A few years ago, if somebody had a great idea or a mediocre idea, they come to marketing and they say, hey, Ian, can you make this movie for me? It's a learning and development. And you'd say, I would, but I can't do it for 3 months. And do you have a budget? And so I think many of the tools now are making video projects more accessible. And I think, by the way, also consumers, having had mobile phones for as long as they have, there's just more creativity across the board. You didn't need to be a video pro to make clever and creative films or movies these days. And so I just think it's a really important medium. Pragmatically, as a marketer, though, it's so much easier to turn a video or even an audio recording, into a blog post or something that can be downloadable or an email. And especially AI makes all of that so much easier. It's much harder to go the other direction. And that's another reason I just like it as a medium.
Why do you think people are talking about Adolescence so much?
I think people are talking about Adolescence because it hit the zeitgeist right now about masculinity and what teenagers are going through. I think this is part of the reason this has become, a cultural topic in the UK, especially, much more so than the one-take filmmaking that it is. I also think that when good entertainment comes around and it surprises people, that's just an indication of where kind of we are in the industry. I think people are clamoring for more really good, authentic content. And I think for those two reasons, it's become part of the zeitgeist. What do you think?
I think parents really struggle to understand their kids right now. I think parents always, since the dawn of time, have struggled to understand their kids. But I think right now, similarly, I think in the digital age, I think it's like even harder because you can be, instead of saying, oh, you're hanging out with Billy, under the bridge, and I don't like that. It's like you can be hanging out with a group that they have no idea who you're hanging out with. And those people can be literally anyone. And you can communicate with them in a language that your parents don't understand right in front of them. And I think that all of that gets at an insecurity that parents have about the well-being of their preteens and teens. So I think that's part of it. You like juxtapose this with like a movie that Primal Fear. I don't know if you ever saw that. Great movie back from the early 2000s with Ed Norton and Richard Gere. That like is kind of more about this kid and the whodunit sort of nature of it, but sort of gets at like, again, thematic elements here that are similar, but they just wanted this to be really, I think, visceral and to sort of, to your point, like you have to Google it afterwards and see if this is actually happening. If you don't have kids that age, then you're like, is this really happening? Like, so I think that really helps. And then I think the one shot thing, like, I think it really helps. I mean, 1917, for example, like, I don't know if that movie would have ever broke through as much if it wasn't, one shot. I don't know if this would have either. I have no idea, but my just hunch is no. And I think that sort of those two things put together makes it remarkable. Like, you just have this thing, you're like, oh, I just saw the craziest show, and like you got kids and I got kids, or we know whatever. And then the other side of it is like, and by the way, like they did this all, they did each of these scenes and they had to do the whole thing like 10 times. It's like so crazy. And you can watch the making of, and, it also helps that Netflix has 100 million people who are on Netflix. So I think that helps too. And, it's an actor that we sort of all know. I think too is another thing. Like he's been around, our generation of people for a long time, like from Snatch to Peaky Blinders, which is a super popular show. So yeah, I just kind of think it's all of those things. But I think it's the combination of each of those that makes it worth talking about. Because like content, you just like, if you're like, man, I saw this show that really just warped my brain, and that's it. It's like, I can't really, whatever. Meredith and I both don't have a 13-year-old son, so we can't sit here and talk about it, talk about kids these days. Like we're not really talking about that, but we would talk about the fact that this is like the way that they shot this was super crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I'm a child who grew up in the 80s. And so when I was 13, the teenager, we'd go out and we'd come back and, when dawn hit, I mean, that was just what we did. To your point earlier about parents sort of not being able to relate or losing control of their kids, and yet they're quote unquote helicopter parents. They have devices. You can use Find My to find out where they are at all times. And yet they're even less connected and less in sync with what the kids are actually going through. And so there's an irony there.
I think also too, like, not everybody likes this. Like there's a percentage of people that don't like this show, that don't like the message, that don't like how it portrays young men. So I think that also probably lends to it a little bit too, that this is not factual. It is scripted content designed to create conversation, not a documentary. You know what I mean? So I think that part of it too, that it's sort of engineered to create a conversation, which it did. So
I tend to agree about that. I was talking to my daughters about the Andrew Tate element and what does this really mean for toxic, masculinity. I didn't know what an incel was, so my daughters had to actually inform me about all of that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But it does get me thinking, well, why have we ended up here? And why have young men ended up on these online forums where they seek this, what probably is toxic reassurance? And I think the show did a very good job touching on that, and it forced those discussions. But I thought they did it in such a way where it didn't make a specific conclusion. And so I'm the anecdote of one personally where I actually now needed to have a conversation with my daughters about what this actually meant, and then really talk openly about, well, how did this happen? And why do boys feel this way? And what can we do to improve that situation? For that reason alone, I thought it was really impactful storytelling.
Yeah. From a storytelling standpoint, I don't know if you've ever heard of the play Oleana by David Mamet. Okay, so I have not seen the play, but so David Mamet wrote this play called Oleana, and essentially the play is, I think it's it's basically a teacher and his student, female student, male teacher, female student, and basically that there's sort of a he said, she said, basically is the plot, is that there was sexual harassment, he said, she said. And when this play came out, people would come out of the theater and literally get in fights about this play of like who was right, of like was she blackmailing him, or was he, was he predatory? Like people would literally get in fights. And David Mamet, there's a great quote where he's one of the best writers ever, and he's like people were getting fights outside of the play. Like what's better than that, And I think that it just speaks to the power of the storyteller, that like to bring these sort of things to the forefront of conversation is super important, It's
an amazing effect when you can leave the audience wanting to have more conversation in the car, leaving the theater, right? Wait, what was doubt about? Who had the doubt, right? Or what did ScarJo whisper into Bill Murray's ear at the end of Lost in Translation? It's like, wait a minute. And you go home and you like, how do I think about this? And that's an amazing aspect. Never seen fighting in the parking lot though. That's a new one.
Yeah. And then and it was he was, there's a great interview or there's a great interview with him where he's talking about it. And basically the interviewer is sort of accusing him, are you trying to rile people up? And he would write about all sorts of different stuff, but are you trying to rile people up? And he'd just be like, it's the point of story. I don't know what to tell you. This is just what I wanted to tell. And I think that that's in video format in today's day and age, as you mentioned, sort of with tools in the hands of the creator more than ever before, where you can tell the story that you want to do it your way. And you can do it, you can assemble a casting crew and write something scripted in that way, or you can do something totally different. But, the choice is yours, as they say, as Olmec said, the choice is yours and yours alone. But I think that it's an important point to just say, my final marketing takeaway on this is that you have to have a point of view. It's so much stuff. It has no point of view. What's the point? What is the point of what you're trying to say? And if the point of view is that, kids stabbing people is a crazy thing, and I want to explore that, and that's something that you feel passionate about, then go in that direction. But a lot of marketing is just sort of, you just go through it once. Hey, we interviewed this person and that was it, and we didn't really do a lot of research, and and then we did one take, and then we cut it, and then PR got to look at it and cut a little bit more, and this is what it is. And it's well, that's not really probably good enough to escape. It's probably not.
I think one of the most interesting elements of Adolescence is how the story came about. To your point, there was a couple news articles that surfaced around, teenage boys stabbing somebody. And that's when Stephen just decided, hey, maybe there's something here as a story. It's sort of like Michael Lewis was talking with somebody about, you have in Major League Baseball, you have people making millions of dollars next to one of their players by the team making $200,000. And how does that disparity happen?
Yeah.
And so he just started calling around and ended up talking to Billy Beane. And that's where, that whole story came from. And it's I just think some of the greatest creators not only have an opinion, but they stumble across some of these things almost haphazardly.
Yeah. And it's just that curiosity, right? To say hey, I think that this should exist. Okay, final question on this. Why are British people such good actors? This kid never acted before. Give me a break. It's unbelievable.
It really is remarkable. I think it's the accent, though. I think that's what it is, Ian. You and I are missing out.
They do American accents better than we do.
But your name is Ian, so at least you have that going for you.
That's true. Yeah, somewhere along the way. All right. Well, I think we covered Adolescence. So such a great topic. Switching gears to Vimeo, how do you think about brand at a company like Vimeo?
Listen, it's such an important question because Vimeo has had a number of different changes in strategy throughout the years. When Vimeo shows up to an event, whether it be Sundance or Salesforce Marketing Connections or NAB in Vegas, the two things happen. People usually look at our booth or see our people and they light up, they smile. Our brand has a very strong magnetic pull. And you don't have to be a filmmaker to have that affinity. People genuinely see Vimeo and they say, oh, okay, there's something positive that happens in their body language. And then the second thing, invariably, or sometimes, people say, why are you here? What?
Yeah.
You're the, if you're a filmmaker, you're probably used to seeing Vimeo as an alternative to YouTube or maybe a corporate, SaaS platform. And conversely, when those people see Vimeo, they coming along with award-winning filmmakers, why are you doing that thing again? And so a lot of times Vimeans in marketing have looked at this as a problem. It's an identity crisis. We did our first user conference on the heels of us turning 20 last October, and it was called Reframe. It was a great event. And we had all different cohorts of Vimeo users, filmmakers, video pros, agencies, learning and development professionals in HR from large companies. And you get them all in the same room, and the energy level is kinetic. They all lean into storytelling, learning about what can be done with video. And it's not an or problem. Are we this or that? It's an and problem. It's how do we make our brand extend to people who all care about the high quality storytelling that video allows? by the way, there's also the reality that a lot of these people work in different capacities. Somebody might work at a company doing learning and development videos on a Tuesday, and then on the weekend aspire to work on their actual film project. I don't think of it as a problem. I actually think of it as a massive opportunity for our brand.
And how do you think about creating content for your audience to get more customers?
When we think about creating content for our projects, first and foremost, I try to think about our customers and what they're trying to accomplish. We just launched a new homepage with 3 or 4 videos embedded in them. They all feature our customers. So what are they trying to do? How are they trying to tell their stories? What types of outcomes are they achieving with the Vimeo platform? The second thing is authenticity. We lean into lo-fi types of videos where our product marketing managers or our product managers are on screen. We have a studio on our 5th floor on the 33rd Street in Manhattan. It's just an office, but it's authentic enough where it comes across as, hey, Ian, let me tell you how to use this record feature in our product, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be A24-esque in terms of our productions. I think, in the past, we thought because we were catering to the most high quality video pros that we had to make highest quality video assets ourselves. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. There's a time and a place for vertical videos, if you know what I mean. So it really does run the gamut, but I think the most that we focus on our customers and what they're trying to accomplish, the best results we get.
Do you have any favorite, pieces of content or campaigns that you've worked on?
Yeah, I mean the video that was the most impactful. It's really dope. If you go to the Reframe, that was the name of our conference video. The opening video was shot on a volume studio in the UK. It's actually where they filmed The Mandalorian.
Cool.
And in fact, it's a one-take shot where it goes through these different vignettes of somebody working in an office, attending a town hall, and then the person gets up from their desk, throws off the jacket, and now the jacket ends up landing behind set, and now somebody's getting made up because she's about to go on stage. And then somebody right next to that actor puts on the Apple Vision Pro because we launched the Vision Pro app. And it was masterfully done. And by the way, the Volume Studio, it's a 3D setup where, you're able to film on a set, but everything is rendered. All of the renders were generated in AI. So, the whole scene starts with somebody bombing down a mountain on skis, and then their friend is actually shooting them on a digital SLR that ends up inside of the camera bag that's now shipped over to somebody so they can edit it on a desk. And so that whole thing was just insanely cool to produce. I love the fact as a marketer that I can provide input on the storyboard level and empower the teams to do the most amazing work that they can and have it come out the way it did. By the way, the last shot of that is the camera actually floating into our Reframe venue and magically morphing into the Reframe logo that was on this stage. So it was a great video production.
That's incredible. We got to link that. We'll link it up in the show notes.
Awesome.
Yeah. What types of stuff is sort of driving ROI for y'all when it comes to branding content?
Yeah, the type of projects that are working the most are projects that actually are using AI to boost productivity or results. For example, we have organizations that are using high production video advertisements that use AI to replace different facets. So imagine if there was a United States football scene and you could actually extract that part of the B-roll and replace it with a European soccer stadium. You can actually do that now at scale, and most people won't know that exists. And then there's also translation too. So, it used to be that if you wanted to turn a video into French, German, and Japanese, you'd need to hire 3 different agencies, 3 different review processes, and then, of course, 3 different videos and 3 different edits, and then hosted at 3 different times. So that's a lot of overhead. And so now with AI captioning and dubbing, with one URL, one video asset, you can actually do that at scale. And by the way, very affordably. So those 2 things come to mind as the places where people are getting the most results on the platform.
Charlie, it's been wonderful having you on the show, chatting Adolescence, chatting Vimeo. Before we get out of here, what's your best piece of advice that you would give to a CMO who's trying to figure out their brand and content strategy?
Yeah, listen, the two pieces of advice I'd give CMOs today is one, you can turn video into an amazing asset to fix your SEO problems. So click-through rates are way down because of AI summaries. Believe it or not, when you embed a video on your page using Vimeo anyway, you can actually have your search engine results go up. So that's one thing to check out. There's tech notes on our blog about how to do that. And then the other one is just like be super authentic. B2B marketers tend to be super buttoned up. And I think we all, as technology buyers, even in the B2B setting, really like authentic marketing. That's why I love some of the brands. I think Descript does a great job at this. Companies like Clay, they're just, their personas in them of themselves. They market their products and their customers and their outcomes in a very authentic way. And I just think more marketers should embrace that.
Completely agree. Well, thanks so much for joining the show. For our listeners, go to Vimeo.com. Obviously, tons of products for marketers with things like hosting, creation, editing, video management, live events, all that sort of stuff. Charlie, any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
No, you got it, man. Ian, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. And Meredith, really enjoyed discussing Adolescence with you as well.
So fun. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie. Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.